I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, September the 13th, where these feeder auction receipts are really swelling. On Tuesday, I was at Ozarks Regional Stockyards in West Plains, Missouri, and the goosenecks were lined up double line deep all the way out to the highway, and they've got a huge parking lot, but had nearly 4,800 head there, and just big receipts everywhere. As we saw after last week, we knew we were going to be coming into this week on an upswing, and finally these guys that are ready to sell some calves and some yearling sellers too are deciding to pull the plug early this week, and we're probably going to see that on through the week on your big sales in the middle of the week. But it's a good time to sell feeder cattle. Get in before the big rush, because October is always a time when we see a couple of weeks at least in there where we've got more supply than we do demand. But you look at the board on Tuesday, live cattle futures for October were down 92 cents. Ended the day on Tuesday at 106.27. And you look at December and February, we're both down over $1.30. So some pretty severe losses on the board on the fat side. Feeder cattle on October contract was down just 20 cents to end the day on Tuesday at 149.15. Of course, your grains were down big too, but all your ag commodities were down pretty hard. Look at the fat trade so far this week. Of course, it's early, but we haven't seen any trade at all. And it's going to be an interesting trade this week. Your feedlots are really reluctant to sell. They gave up a whole lot of market position the last 6 weeks or so, and now that they've lost August as their spot month, getting into October, they've lost their basis too, so they've got nothing to go on there. And the cattle are losing money and starting to lose significant money on some of these pens. So they're really not wanting to sell cattle very bad unless they can maybe at least hold the market, and we may be able to gain a buck or two this week. Your packers are actually needing some cattle. They've gotten through the holiday kill of Labor Day, and they're getting into September, and they're really wanting to crank those change speeds up again and get them some inventory built up. And they've had about 3 weeks of light negotiated trade, which the negotiated trade doesn't add up to near half of what they need every week. They've got so much captive supplies, but they do need the negotiated trade to keep their inventory built up, and the packers will probably need some cattle here middle of the week. So it'll be interesting to say. Supposedly early this week, we've already seen them come in with some bids as high as 103, which is just a token bid, but when they're at least talking and answering the phone and calling around and things, then that goes to show that they are probably going to be needing some cattle. Fed Cattle Exchange got another light run, which is really not going to play a part in this week's trade at all. So we're not going to see anything on Wednesday morning on that level to really give us an idea of what's going to happen. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens out in the country. But box beef cutout values for the packer side, the sales have really slowed down here end of last week and moving into this week, and we're starting to see the results of the storms, and those are some pretty significant population areas where Harvey and Irma both hit. And you know, they'll come back, you know, after they get kind of back to normal. But you know, those guys, when they've got, you know, 4 foot of water rolling through their houses, they're not going out and having a steak. And it's in some pretty significant population areas, and it's enough to make a difference, and that has been the difference on the slowdown of the meat sales. But you look at some feeder markets, a real-time index on Beef Market Central based on an 800-pound steer. Late Tuesday was sitting at 147.52, basically steady with Monday's close, but up 9 cents, which a big part of that was Phillips, South Dakota. They really had a great sale on Tuesday, and some pretty high yearling prices. But the feeder market has been really good this week, and we knew that we were coming in with a head of steam, but it's carried through at least through late Tuesday, and probably will the rest of the week. But OKC West had a good run of calves for the calf sale on Tuesday, 2,200 head. That's about twice what they've been getting here the last part of the summer and moving into September. But their calves sold $2 to $3 higher. It's calf time. And a lot of guys are geared up to buy calves, especially in that area for wheat grazing. And the calves are starting to come to town. We're starting to get to some of your reputation type consignments, which always brings your buyers up to the edge of their seat. And as those start to come to town, we start seeing a little more trade and more demand for calves. There's still a big yearling push, as the yearlings are drying up. We just don't have many yearlings, hardly any green yearlings to speak of anywhere. Now, you normally see yearlings still come to town and be shipped off grass in like the foothills of the Rockies, some places like that. Not anymore out in your big grazing areas like your Osage and your Flint Hills and things like that, but in the foothills of the Rockies and eastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, places like that, maybe a few up north, you start seeing some yearlings come off in the fall of the year. But some of those areas are places that have filled back up with cows and calves. So not as much yearling leasing going on out there, and like there was back when calves got really high, and whenever we were real short on numbers, that was some of the places that had cleared out of cows and calves. But they've had a couple of years of so-called normal rainfall or moisture, and they have started moving cows back into those areas. And it's been so wet here late in the summer, but those guys would really like to get their hands on some more cows if they could find some that would fit their program. But you look at West Plains here, where I was at on Tuesday, had 4,760 head, $2 to $4 higher, a lot of active trade, and visiting with some guys around there. I've been going to that market for probably the last 16, 18 years, and when I first started going there, you can't believe how the quality has improved. And I say that where I was at earlier in the week out in Lexington, Kentucky, that whole southeastern area has really improved our quality, if you want to call that. More solid colored cattle, more heavily influenced in black cattle, and the kind of cattle that guys are really looking for in the Midwest and even the Northern Plains. I'm not saying you can take calves out of south central Missouri and take them up to South Dakota. That doesn't work very well, but you can move them straight west into some of those Kansas feedlots, and it's a lot better kind of calves than what you used to get 15, 20 years ago. And with the exception of the extreme southern part of the southeast along the Gulf Coast there and in Florida, you just don't see much Brahman influence anymore. You don't see many painted up calves anymore. None of those real narrow-boned, fine-boned kind of cattle. You just don't see them that much anymore. And just pretty good kind of cattle throughout our nation for the most part, where people are in the business of raising them. But you look at some individual quotes on Tuesday at 4:30 in the afternoon. Phillips, South Dakota, right here on DV Auction, had 90 head of bigger calves, 575-pound calves, bring 183 1/4. And a Midwestern market we just gained here in the last several weeks. Clarinda, Iowa at 10:20 on Tuesday morning had 60 head of steers, weighed 799, right at that 800-pound level, bring 160.50. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.